One of the things I love about our national conferences is we get an opportunity to hear from some amazing speakers. They tell us their experiences, and we're left examining ourselves, tweaking our perspective, and figuring out ways we can level up and just become great at what we're doing. Years ago, we're introduced to Jen Bricker. And as Jen's getting on stage, you can't help but notice this girl has no legs. And when you hear Jen's story and her testimony, it's extremely powerful. She's born with no legs, and her parents left her behind at the hospital. They weren't going to be taking her home. Now, you want to talk about playing a tough hand in life, like that's the start. No legs, and family abandons her. Lucky for Jen and lucky for the Bricker family, she's adopted into this amazing household where she's led to believe, Jen, there are no limitations in life. You can do whatever you want to do. Jen wants to play basketball. Well, she doesn't look at herself as handicapped. I'm not playing wheelchair basketball. I'm going to play basketball with everybody else. So as people are running around, she's moving around with her arms. She's not using a wheelchair. She decides she wants to get into gymnastics. And her parents just remind her, listen, it might be harder for you, but there's nothing you can't do. It might take you longer. You're going to have to try a little harder, but you can do it. She goes on to become state champion in gymnastics. So just this amazing woman. When I think of Jen, I think of somebody who's just rooted deeply in her faith and just has this unbelievable attitude. You can't help but examine yourself and just say, what's my excuse in life? She's going on to do whatever she wants to do. No excuses. Really, what's your excuse? Today, she travels around the world speaking and performing. She married Dominik Bauer. He's an amazing guy from Austria, musician. He's part of the entertainment and the show. They put on an amazing performance. And they're both amazing speakers. When you hear them speak, you can't help but really just get a tear in your eye and really be moved. She wrote a book, Everything is Possible. They stopped by my home, and again, my kids they love being around Jen and Dominik, and I asked if I could do a quick interview with them, so I hope you guys enjoy this interview with Jen Bricker-Bauer and Dominik Bauer.
I was born without legs, put up for adoption, left in the hospital, not given a name actually, and kind of immediately right there, I always feel like I have to pause because that's a lot for people to take in, and I kind of just see people going like, whoa, that's all these kind of words, unfair, rough way to start life, a tough break, victim to your circumstances, on and on, right? So any kind of thing that, and I understand if people think that, it's an initial reaction, I get that, and I understand the mentality behind that. But I've seen throughout my life God move in ways where actually not having legs has been a blessing in my life. And you might think, okay, really? You're just trying to sound like a cheesy motivational speaker, whatever. But I actually mean it, and I actually believe it, and I've seen it, and I live it. And one example would be just, I'm a speaker, I do professional aerial and acrobatics. So aerial is like, if you've seen Cirque du Soleil, the silk fabric hanging from the ceiling. So that's all under the umbrella of being an aerialist. Acrobatic could be flipping, tumbling, trampoline, that kind of a thing, to give you kind of an understanding of what that means when I say that. I always loved sports, competed in softball, basketball, volleyball, and power tumbling. Power tumbling is if you ever watch gymnastics, there's 4 events. One of the events is on the floor where they do back handsprings and twists and things like that. So that's tumbling. Power tumbling, instead of a square floor, is a long strip, basically. So I competed in that for 4 years. Was the only first person ever with no legs to do that. Won state champion and went to Junior Olympics and did all these things. And at the time, I just loved sports. And so I didn't really understand why everybody was making a big deal about it. I was on TV shows, I was in newspaper articles, people were coming up to me, coaches coming up to me. I was a kid saying, oh, I want to bring my athlete to watch you because I don't want them to complain anymore. And I was always like, what? This is so dumb. Why are they making such a big deal? I'm just doing what I love, And so as I've gotten older, back to how having no legs has been a blessing. Seeing that God used that and uses the very thing that sounds like this hit in the face way to be coming into your life to inspire other people, to change people's lives. And it doesn't ever stop being humbling to me. To have a life where you live and it's not all about you, but it's for other people, that there's freedom in that. Freedom in that. And it's also something that gets you out of bed every morning.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, I have purpose. God has purpose for me. If I'm alive and breathing, that means there's a plan for me right now. And that's for everybody. That's for everybody.
Right.
And that is, people used to ask me when I was younger, there was a magic pill that would make you automatically have legs. Would you take it? And I thought, what would I do? Like, I really wanted to give a real answer.
Yeah.
So I didn't answer immediately. I don't even know how long I thought about it, if it was like a day or two, or I really thought about it. And a funny thing about me, or an ironic thing, is I love fashion, but I love shoes. I've always loved shoes. And the joke would be like, my parents would say, man, if you would have had legs, I could have never afforded you. Because all the shoes that I would have wanted to buy, like the high heel, amazing Louboutins, like, Jimmy Choo, amazing kind of shoes. And so I thought about those things, like, oh, that would be fun, and that would be amazing. And then I thought about the real things, like, practically, of course my life would be easier. Of course certain things would be practically easier. I wouldn't have to think about, like, if I use a wheelchair, is there a ramp somewhere? Or do I have to get out of the chair? And am I wearing something nice? I don't want to get my clothes dirty. Or just like these really kind of small things, but they're every day, right? So yeah, of course, those things would be easier. Absolutely. But every time when it came down and the rubber met the road and it got real and I really thought about it, I said, no, I couldn't do it. I could never take the pill. Because I thought, is it really worth, and am I really willing to give up an entire destiny that reaches millions of people just to make my life easier? And I thought, how can you compare? How can you compare? And what I've learned so far through all of that, not that have all the wisdom or anything like that, just I learned that not everything that makes your life easier is actually beneficial for you.
Right.
I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
Obviously. And that's a big thing. That's like I'm sure there's a lot of people, they're like, Jen, don't say that. I don't want to hear it. But there's so
Tell
much.
me to take the easy path.
Right.
No.
There's just a lot of truth in that, right? So that's a very brief, even though it wasn't that brief, kind of overview of just till now. And I wrote a book, and I've been all over the world and done that and toured with Britney Spears, but those are just kind of like the foundational, like, beginning of kind of why I am the way I am. My parents said, even when I was really young, like before I remember, before I could, I think, even really talk, like I could talk, but not like an adult. She said she remembered one of the neighbor ladies came and kind of course, bent down. So not like speaking down to me, but like just literally speaking down to me, but spoke with like a sympathy. And my mom said, you literally stared a hole through that woman. She's like, you hated it so much before you even could understand. She's like, you knew when somebody was kind of feeling sorry for you or speaking with like this sympathy kind of thing. And so I guess I really always rejected that before I understood it. I knew I didn't like it. And then I guess when I got older, I never thought about these things as a kid. That's the interesting thing, is like, I'm really glad that I didn't have to. People you don't really talk about these things as a kid. And especially like when I was younger, it's even different now, of course, much different, but you just didn't really like, I don't know, I was just me, and I kind of liked the fact that I was small, and I felt cute because that's what I heard, you know? And I always felt so strong. I was physically very strong, always, just because genetically I was that way, and also I was always into sports. And I grew up in a small town, so like we all just knew each other, so it wasn't really a big deal that I didn't have legs. And so while of course me not having legs was a part of who I was, so was the fact that I loved dogs. So was the fact that I had dark hair, and then I was adopted, and like all these things. But it was not my identity.
Right.
And that, I think, was the big, huge part. It was a part of me, but not all of me. It didn't define me. It didn't like, it wasn't the sole most important thing about me. I actually, like, I have a good personality. I would like you to think that I'm more than just not having legs or being adopted or, you know, like there were so many things that make up who I am.
Right.
And being a victim was like, absolutely not. I mean, that's also not how I was raised. So it also goes into my parents, the way they parented me, kind of all of that. Yeah. I think if you know that you're here for a reason, I think if you know you have purpose, even if you don't exactly know yet what that is, but knowing that your life has so much value. And I think a big thing is knowing that you bring something to the table, so to speak. So many people think that they're insignificant, their life is irrelevant, and that if they believe they have gifts and talents to offer, and that's a big if because some people don't believe they even have that, that their talents and gifts are less important than someone else who has more money, more followers, more influence, more impact. And I think that is such a lie because it's so discouraging, it's so defeating, it's really distracting. It's speaking death into someone, even if that's us speaking death into ourselves. And I'm all about speaking life into someone, not fear, not speaking death into someone, but speaking life into someone, giving hope. And sometimes we have to speak life into ourselves, you know, all the time. Day to day, we have choices that we have to make every day. And so I would just encourage you to know that you're here for a reason. You're not a mistake. You're not an accident. It doesn't matter where you came from. Doesn't matter if you started out with what seems like rough circumstances or impossible circumstances. You don't have to be a victim to that. You can be. You can choose that. No one's stopping you. But we can also choose a different way. And you don't have to be the victim to emotions, to circumstances, to anything.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
But we have to make the choice, and then we have to live with the consequences of that. That's just how life is, you know?
Right.
But there can be so much more, and we're made for so much more than that. To live life, you know, in black and white or color. It sounds cheesy, but it really is. It can come to life, and it's interesting because that's our choice. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So I would just encourage you to, I hope that encourages you to know that your gifts and talents are equal in value. They're different, they're diverse. Thank goodness for that because it can be very uninteresting. But knowing that there's equal value, that everybody, the life and the things that we offer, they're different, but they all have the power to change somebody's life.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
I've heard people say the two most important days in a person's life, the day you're born and the day you figure out why you were born. Right? Like when you finally have purpose in your life, like what is the cause of my life? Why did God put me on this planet? When you figure that out, that becomes a hallmark moment for you, and now the rest of your life is filled with purpose and exactly what you're saying. So you would concur with that message?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, but I think even if you don't know, we can already be living with that. If you believe that you're here for a reason, and if you believe you have a purpose, you can still be living that way, even if you don't know it. That we don't have to delay. We don't have to wait for a moment, you know, because I think that can also really delay and discourage us in the waiting, or we think that we have to be perfect until we get to that point to be valuable. But you're already valuable, even if you don't have it all figured out, because there's going to be a lot of times when you don't know, and there's just a period of time, you know, and you're not any less valuable, you're not any less important. It's just a part of your journey, you know.
Where does before you really figure out your purpose, where does the drive come from then? Just to be excellent in what you're doing, or?
I think that's very different for everybody, very different, and that's something I was always interested and confused in people, because I always felt so different in kind of with the drive aspect. And I think there are a lot of factors that come into drive. I think you can be raised in a family where you're just kind of taught to have ambition and drive. That can become an idol too. That anything we have can become an unhealthy thing in our life if it's not checked and balanced, you know. I've seen my drive work for me in most of my life. It can work against you in some areas, you know, but for the most part, I think drive is very healthy as long as it doesn't become like more important than the actual like you and your life, and that doesn't become your identity, you know. But where it comes from, wow, I think that can come from so many different places, and some of the places can be very healthy and some of them actually can be unhealthy. It's crazy. Like I didn't really grasp that kind of like, but these are all good qualities, but even the good things about us, if they're not checked, or a healthy balance or a healthy hierarchy or like priority, that can just turn into something too that's like a stumbling block or you know, this thing in your life. But for me, my drive and ambition just came from knowing that there was purpose in being born like this, and that, let's say, even if something tragic happened and it wasn't something good, because a lot of people would say, well, it's not good to be born that way. Okay, I'll play along with that theory, okay? But God can work through that anyway. So like that's the freedom part. That's the amazing part, is that there's no limit to that. It doesn't matter what happened to us. It doesn't matter how bad it looks on the outside. There can always be, let's say, redemption in that, transformation, whatever, you know, whatever way you want to slice it with your words, that everything can be used to reach and touch people's lives. I mean, living like that, I don't burn out. If I was living just for me, there's no longevity in that. I would have burned out years ago, I think.
Tell us how you met Jen. Give us the Dominik Bauer story here.
Right. Well, that was about 4 years ago, actually. And the interesting thing is, it was very, very new. I barely knew Jen when I first came into your house, and I celebrated my first Thanksgiving with you guys. So that was pretty cool. I was all nervous, and the first time in the US. So I was born and raised in Austria, in Europe. I was living in Vienna at that time when I first met Jen. And she mentioned she's a speaker. So she had a speaking engagement in Austria that I went to, and I heard her speak for about an hour, and the story was just unbelievable, which I thought is really unbelievable. Some parts of it was like, I don't know if that's true. Because it was just so amazing to hear that. And so after the speech, she wrote a book too, and just was translated in 11 languages so far. One of them is German. So I bought a book. I went there. She signed my book, and I went home and just read the book. And something happened. And one of the things that you mentioned is what really stood out to me. What really stood out to me was her attitude and her perspective towards life. And as I was reading the book, I thought, I've never heard anybody speak like that. I've never heard anybody with that kind of perspective in life and outlook in life, and just so much life in that book. You know? And it's not just, it wasn't motivating. I've listened to so many motivational speakers before where you are just pumped. And it's almost, I don't want to say surface level, but it is kind of surface level emotional kick that you get from a motivational speech, where you think you can just jump up and you can do it all. You know, you think that whatever I set my mind to, I can achieve, and I can become whoever I want to, and you're just pumped, and it lasts for like a day or two, or maybe a week, maybe a month, but then something just isn't right, and you need the next motivational speech, right? But when I listened to her, or just reading the book, I thought, there's just so much life into that, and I just had peace about it. And I thought, I thought to myself, I want to be with a person like that. This is incredible. I've never heard anybody speak like that. So I reached out to her, and actually she texted me back, and we just kept texting, you know, back and forth, and became a friendship. And after a couple of months, I said, I want to see you again. So I flew to Los Angeles the first time. And that's when we came here in November 2018. And the second day we came here and celebrated Thanksgiving
Mhm.
with all the food and everything.
Mhm. And craziness.
First Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it was cool.
And to make such a positive impact on people, I mean, that's got to
Right.
be quite empowering. I mean, you were saying that you've got a video that went viral and 60 million people hit that video, and just knowing you guys are making such a positive impact on the world. I mean, what's that like? How does that make you guys feel?
It's like Jen already said, it doesn't make you burn out. It does sometimes make you feel tired physically or maybe mentally. At some point, you're up all day, you're speaking all day or whatever, you're speaking to so many different people and you're getting tired physically and you need a break. But it's not something on a foundational level.
Yeah.
You're getting charged.
Yeah.
Yes. on a spiritual level, or really your soul gets just charged and you feel empowered, you feel good about it, you feel a sense of purpose and just loving on people and edifying people, speaking life, empowering people. It's just empowering yourself, to be honest.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's definitely charging. I would say that it fills me big time. Like, and yeah, of course I get super exhausted, I get really tired, but I want to keep doing it because it is so charging and it fills you so much, and you're just like, people come away with such different perspectives too. Like, or if 10 people listen to us speak or perform, they could come with 10 different reasons of why it touched them, or why they were crying, or why they were moved, and so that's really interesting for me, and it's like, wow, it's so humbling.
Just the theatrical alone is just very, it's touching, it's emotional, it's just a great show you guys put on. Add to that then when you guys speak, it's just a powerful message, powerful situation to be in, to just make such a good impact on people. So just one little bonus thing for you I didn't think about till now, but so you just went through the 23andMe, like, hey, where am I really from? And so you come to find out that, there's a specific part of the world that I'm from, and it happens to be a little place in Greece. Let's zoom in a little closer. I'm a Spartan, right? So how does your perspective on you change, knowing that you're related to Leonidas? How does that do?
It like, on one hand, like when I saw like such concentrated DNA where it was like only in one place of the world, because not like a little here, a little there, that's kind of more normal. I wasn't surprised by that because our DNA was so strong, and like my biological sisters and I, we all looked so much alike, and there was so much just like our DNA just takes over, it was kind of that. But then seeing it like, we're from this island in Greece, and that's where Sparta is, and we're like Spartans, like what? And then seeing like, your muscle composition is that of an elite athlete, and I always had so much muscle, like naturally, without lifting weights. And that's not normal for a woman. And that's not just because I don't have legs, which I thought most of my life. But then as I got older, I realized like there were plenty of other people born without legs and use their arms just as much as me, and they don't have the muscle like I do. So it actually was, long before I knew my DNA results, I had already realized that it was my DNA. And then it tells me that, and I'm like, stop it. Like, get out of here, And then Dominik's like, it all makes sense now. Okay, yep, your personality, the way it all makes sense.
You feel like buying a sword now? You feel like going to the grocery store with a sword? And
it does seem fitting.
Sparta.
Like, it's like, and we like kind of did a little digging in it, and it's like the women and the Spartan women trained, they were like the only people in that time that trained equally as much as the men. And like, so then they ate as much and they trained as much, and they like, it was just, I'm like, now that part, that I do feel like that makes some sense for me, it's like this kind of intensity that I always have, that I don't know where it kind of comes from, and I don't want to get like too far stretched, in that, but there are some things that it's just kind of like, I'd say that's not too hard to like connect the dots.
Yeah, oh, totally.
It's funny, it's insane, but it's also like, yeah, that sort of makes sense.
Yeah.
I think more for him too, being on the outside.
Well, you were saying something about her level of like discipline is just off the charts, right?
It is,
You're married
yeah.
to this woman, like, well, she's a Spartan, so it makes sense to you, like, yeah.
It does. You know, just the strength, the conviction of things. If something's wrong, it's wrong. If something's right, it's right. She was always like that. And then also, if she wants to do something, she's just gonna do it, no matter what it takes. It's like I want to do something. You know, I want to put on some muscles. I want to, you know, go to the gym more, eat more. She's like, you haven't had a meal in 4 hours. I thought you wanted to gain weight. You know, just do it. And if she wants to do it, she's also thinking about it and putting in the effort, whatever it takes. You know, if you have a goal, then you just do what it takes. And she's just straightforward.
Is that how it is with everything? You put your mind on something, it's done.
Sometimes I'm like, when he talks about me, I'm like, man, I think I'm a little too harsh. But then I'm also like, but that's how I did everything that I did, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's because it had to, I didn't, you know, I kind of told you that the other day. It was kind of like, that's how I had, that was my formula. If I wanted to do stuff like everybody else, you know, play sports that were just with everybody else, because that's also how I saw myself. I didn't see myself as disabled, like, at all. I would have looked at you like you were an alien. If you would have actually told me that I was kind of in the disabled category, I'd be like me?
Right.
I don't think that me? You don't know me very well then. You know, like, that's how I would have thought. I kind of still think that way, actually. But so for me, it's like, well, if you want to do something, then you figure out a way to do it. And if you haven't figured out a way to do it, then you obviously didn't want it that bad. It was just kind of like very clear. A lot of that was how I was raised too. But to me, it's like, well, then just do it. Like, and if you're not doing it, then stop saying you want it so bad. And it's kind of frustrating. It's kind of annoying because I'm like, it's kind of simple, you know? And that's where that harshness comes in. I'm like, I didn't realize I was kind of like that. I thought everybody was like that. And then I got older and I realized, wow, everybody's not like that. And that was always really confusing for me. I actually I think I spent most of my life not understanding people, actually, in that way. I'm still like that. I really have a hard time understanding the mentality of some people. I'm starting to think it was just because I think I really had to be a little bit intense to do the things that I wanted to do, but I didn't realize it. You know, I just wanted to do something, and my parents were like, yeah, do it. Like, you can do it. Of course you can do it. It's going to look different. You're going to have to try harder. You're going to have to figure things out, but it can be done. Just believing it can be done is like almost the whole battle. You know, it's most of it. Yeah.
I think overthinking was not really a thing for you ever. Like, you think overthinking is more like a form of excuse then?
Kind of. For me, I kind of always thought that.
Yeah. And when
It's
it comes
just a delay or like a...
Right. When it comes to workout, for example, it's just, I want to gain weight, right? So she's like, yeah, eat more, sleep more, and work out more. And no matter how you feel, you don't feel like it, well, then you don't want it. Because that's what, if you're changing a habit, you're always confronted with circumstances or whatever, because we're used to habits. So when it comes to eating more, I'm like, I feel full. Well, it doesn't matter. You want to gain weight and eat. And that's kind of how she does it with in almost every area in life. That's just an example. Overcomplifying things or making it too complicated is just counterproductive, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't notice these things about myself. You know, other people always noticed it and always talked about it, but I was like, not as a kid, I mean, but just as an adult, really more when I started becoming a speaker and being on interviews and things like that and TV shows. And I didn't really, I don't know, sometimes people just like to flatter you too, you know, and compliment you and, you know, whatever. And so, but like, hearing it from his perspective and kind of thinking about it, it gives it a bit of an insight, you know, a bit of an understanding for me. I was like, yeah, I think I just kind of just did these things, and a lot of things were uncomfortable. Like it's kind of normal to be uncomfortable for me. Like, I mean, like I don't feelings. I mean, well, I don't feel good, or I don't feel like I feel physically uncomfortable. I don't mean just like emotionally uncomfortable. I mean, like, yeah, trying on prosthetics is physically uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. You know, I didn't like that, or like doing other things. You know, just learning how to, like, you're the one that's always different, and so every single thing, like learning how to serve volleyball, the strength was all there, but the height and getting it over the net from a far away back where you have to serve from, that was hard. And so I always had to like go harder, try things differently. I was just always different. So I had to figure it out. And so that takes more time, takes more effort, it takes more, but I think I didn't realize that as a kid. It was just the way it got done.
Yeah. You developed the muscle of willpower.
I guess.
Big time.
But I couldn't have even had a conversation about any of this until in my 20s. I mean, I didn't realize those things about myself. Yeah.
He gets to point them out.
And he points them out, yeah. So it's like, I don't mind, like, I also kind of like to know my strengths and the areas where I'm not so good at, you know. I don't really mind that, you know. I think I guess a lot of people really do mind that. So that's kind of where I think my harshness or brashness comes in, where I just kind of call somebody out, but I don't mean to be mean. That's how I talk to myself, you know. And so I have to learn still how to be like that in life, and then how to be like that in marriage. It's very different. Very, very different. And so for me, it's just a big learning curve with those things.